Welcome to the WisDOT Civil 3D 2016 software update and standards release. For now, the WisDOT Civil 3D 2016 Getting Started type of documentation will be located on the main Civil 3D training web page as a PDF. This PDF document is a good source of further information to supplement this video. There's also other videos included. Let's start with the why. A few of the main concepts that guided the creation and development for the 2016 configuration can be described in these three goals: to promote clean, simplified drawings and project data, to provide production standards workflows, to assist in maintaining plotting output consistency. We will try to keep these 3 points in mind as we continue with this presentation. Just like 2014, there is a WisDOT desktop shortcut that is required to launch the WisDOT 2016 configuration. It starts up Civil 3D by setting the WisDOT profile as current. Please note that for 2016 WisDOT, an ARG file will not be provided. This is because the WisDOT configuration includes a custom profile build tool. I will show this later on in the presentation. I will briefly be covering a large amount of topics in this presentation, and this should not be considered as a how-to demonstration. At the end, I will display the WisDOT package download and training locations on the WisDOT FTP site, and try to cover the consultant package in some detail. Like I stated earlier, WisDOT will include documentation and a video on their web and FTP sites that can be downloaded along with the WisDOT 2016 standards package and installation tools. It's important that you completely read and understand the installation guide provided before deploying any of the tools into your consultant environment. When we open the WisDOT maintenance tool, we see that this is now a central dialog for many of the WisDOT maintenance and administrative tools. We have clear cache, we have a new remove extraneous project files, install updates. This is important for the consultant installation if you choose a server deployment, which I will speak in greater detail later. Also, there's a remove WisDOT settings, a disable WisDOT settings. Notice there are version controls. Maybe obviously most new tools will not be available for each version. Now let's launch Civil 3D 2016 using the Civil 3D 2016 WisDOT shortcut. Depending on the install options, the first thing that may appear is the WisDOT Civil 3D Environment Dialog or splash screen. This is really meant to provide a one-stop location for updates and change notifications, as well as updated links to documentation specific to this version. Notice there will be Civil 3D 2016 Getting Started, read latest updates, and open WisDOT Civil 3D Training Index. This should point to the new upcoming knowledge base website. This dialog may be closed by using the red X or pressing the do not show this dialog again. Next time we open up Civil 3D, this will not show. Well, Civil 3D 2016 looks pretty similar to 2014, right? The same drawing format is used in both, so from a project design perspective, there's little need for a migration process for drawings and project data. And if you continue to use the WisDOT shortcut, all the existing sub-assemblies will be mapped correctly and cause no problems. With both 2014 and 2016 versions using the same drawing format with the same software design tools in place, there are no major changes to any of the WisDOT design flows so far. I want to stress design workflows because there may be some significant workflow changes in the sheet creation and deliverable output realm. This will depend on what stage of sheet production the project is in and whether it is being moved from 2014 to 2016 or if it's a new project done entirely in 2016. For more information on what has changed in the Civil 3D 2016 software, Please refer to the 2016 documentation, again on the FTP site, WisDOT Civil 3D 16 doc PDF. This will describe changes that have been made on the Autodesk side of the software. Additional Autodesk tools WisDOT will be using in 2016 are the Civil 3D 2016 Productivity Pack 1 and 2 and the Civil 3D 2016 Transportation Extension. As part of the Civil 3D 2016 implementation, the Methods Development Team has made the decision to upgrade some of the planned production standards. WisDOT will now use common Windows TrueType fonts. TrueType fonts do not require line weight settings, which means less layers. The previous DOT fonts will be provided for conversion purposes and legacy plotting needs. So now all DOT fonts, dot.shx fonts, are being retired as of Civil 3D 2016 release. Again, WisDOT Civil 3D 2016 standard fonts are Windows TrueType fonts. The old legacy fonts will be provided for legacy purposes, but should not be used going forward. The legacy Textiles and DOT fonts are not included in the 2016 startup templates or sheet templates. The following is a list of the new 2016 Textiles with corresponding fonts. For 2016, the textile names will be the same name as the font name, without the space. Here's a list of the textiles and fonts used. Notice that all the WisDOT added textiles are annotative. Here's a table comparison of sorts. There's not a real direct textile conversion from 2014 to 2016, as none of the new textiles defines a text height, only a font type. So the left side just shows somewhat of a default textile match. The right side shows a more straight font conversion. The uses for the textiles and fonts will become much more apparent and understandable once we get into showing the concept of the sheet production palette workflows. In addition to updating the fonts, WisDOT has made upgrades to the plot style tables. There are still 3 plot style tables. The one is kept for legacy purposes, while one is designed to be used to meet WisDOT standard sheet output, and the third is designed to use when specific overrides are needed for non-standard or one-off deliverables are required. The idea is to leverage the plot style tables for standardized sheet output. This means the new plot style table defines the standards output, and layer settings can be used as a means of overrides using the new override plot style table. Here's a look at the plot style pen weights for the WisDOT standard STB. Notice there are 20 black and 20 gray settings. I will show how these are used in the layers and in the page sets and plot styles further on in this presentation. Now that we have a little description of the WisDOT standards that have been updated for 2016, let's jump back into 2016 and take a look at what WisDOT has added to the interface. Right away we can notice that there are 4 WisDOT ribbons: WisDOT Standards, WisDOT Design, WisDOT Sheets, and WisDOT Tools. Let's start by opening up the WisDOT Tools ribbon. What you'll notice here in the WisDOT Macros, WisDOT Reports, and Survey File Conversion panels are that these are the same tools that are provided on the Toolbox, WisDOT Toolbox. It just gives you a different option, a different place to access the tools. Same tools, different access point. There are 2 other panels on the WisDOT Tools ribbon: Navigation and Maintenance. The Navigation panel provides a few tools: a Rotate View and Plan View tools, along with the Export View, Import Views, and Delete View tools. The Maintenance panel provides a Drawing Cleaning tool. Notice if we hover over any of these tools, we get the tooltips. This provides you a little more information on what the tool is about. The ribbons are designed to perform 5 basic functions: to access and insert basic drawing standard components, to launch palettes that contain design and sheet production workflow tools, to run WisDOT custom tools, similar to what we've shown here in the navigation tools, to run reports directly from the ribbon, also as a single access to AutoCAD tools needed for WisDOT sheet development workflows, and also as an organized tool for plot configuration and management. We will try to cover all 5 of those functions in some respect. Now let's move on to the WisDOT standards ribbon. Since one of the main functions of the ribbon is to switch palettes, a palette on-off tool has been provided. Notice this will turn the palettes on and off. The first 2 panels, the tools and the startup panels, because of their functionality, are repeated in both the WisDOT design and the WisDOT sheets ribbons. Something to remember, the WisDOT ribbons and palettes are a work in progress. The methods team will be working on improvements, expansions, and some modifications in line with the 3 goals I stated earlier. Clean drawings, well-defined sheet production workflows using WisDOT standards, and straightforward plot standards. WisDOT support and training is the next button. This will open up the splash screen we saw earlier and should help provide in linking to the training sites. Next on the startup panel we have the Startup Templates tool. This will switch the palettes to the startup templates. Notice we have all 4 of the startup templates on the palette. Okay. The Startup Templates tool switches the palettes to the Drawing Startup Templates palettes by changing the palette path setting. Okay. All the WisDOT palettes are organized within a folder and subfolder structure instead of using a palette groups which are tied to profiles. By doing this, it allows WisDOT to be able to deliver the palettes as is to the consultants without the need to recreate them or use the import-export tool. Remember importing and exporting 2014, where there's no need to do that in this 2016. The entire folder is delivered to the consultant. By using the ribbon and palette combination like this, WisDOT has made the maintenance, distribution, and use of the standard components within Civil 3D as a packageable unit to consultants much easier. There is a little caveat on this, okay, and so I'm going to explain a little palettes best practice, if you will, especially if you want to dock the palettes. But it also kind of works when you minimize. Okay, so if I have the auto hide when it's not docked, and I go and change a palette by selecting a different tool, there's a little delay in the refresh. You don't notice as much when it's undocked, and that's the preferable state, because then you can just use the on-off and dock it on a different display, if you will. When it is docked and you have it minimized and you change the palette, notice that there's a delay in the refresh. You actually have to click back into the model space, click back for it to come on. Okay. If it's, look how quick it works, not minimize. So you may want to either undock it and use the on-off palettes, keeping it non-minimized or non-auto hide. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out to a non-docking state. Let's go ahead and open up one of the drawing startup templates for 2016. This will be drawing 4. What we'll do is we'll compare that to a 2014 template. Which will be drawing 5. If I run the purge command on drawing 5, which is the 14 template, you'll notice that there are all kinds of items that are purgeable. Okay, they're sitting out here. What that means is they're not used in the template. View items you can purge means that items that are not in a style, in a settings, that are not being consumed by some element within the template. Now conversely, if we go over to drawing 4, which is the new 2016 template, and we run purge, notice that there are no items. View items you can purge, there's no items to be purged. WisDOT has reconfigured the drawing startup templates for 2016 to only contain components that are being used in the settings. Civil 3D styles, annotation elements, dimension styles, those type of things, layers. If it's being used in the template, it's in the template. If it's not, all the WisDOT standard components that can be used in a drawing that are not included in the startup templates are provided throughout the WisDOT standards ribbons. And that's where we get to the standards components panel. The user can develop a drawing for any specific workflow or create any deliverable by selecting one of the startup templates and then adding additional components as necessary. This standard setup allows the users to purge drawing items that are not being used with the confidence that any standard component can be easily brought into any drawing from WisDOT Ribbon or WisDOT Palette, or even Design Center. WisDOT is moving toward controlling standards through tool choice with predefined object settings on the ribbons and mostly on the palettes. So what are the main WisDOT standard configuration components? In Civil 3D 2016, WisDOT standards design production components have been divided into object groups. The raw component files can be found in C WisDOT STND C3D 2016 components. All of these components can be accessed by the use of a ribbon or specific palettes. The component elements are organized in the following folders. Notice we got assemblies, blocks. A lot of these you will see in the standards ribbon. What you don't see on the standards ribbons may be on the reports and or one of the other ribbons. Now let's take a look at the standards components panel. Each one of these tools in the standards components panel will add the component to the current drawing. Click on add layers, even add marker symbols. What these tools do is to add layers and any other components that those layers may need to the current drawing. Okay, I can add dimensions, multi-leaders. Now if we take a look at the purge ability, we'll notice that we have all kinds of components, layers, line types. All of these can be purged, and they can also be used within this drawing. If they're used within a drawing, then they won't be in this purged list. You can see now that if I hit the purge all, I have a nice clean drawing, and at any given time I can add in the necessary components I need for that drawing. Now let's add a text style. Use the Add Textile tool. One other feature appears. WisDOT Annotation dialog appears. This gives you the instant option to set the current text style and select from a predefined heights. So I could select the text style and font and select from a predefined heights. Okay. By doing this, this sets the current text style and the current height. Also provided is a button to go directly to the annotative ribbon if the user needs to create one-off or manual annotation as not provided on WisDOT workflow palettes. The last panel on the WisDOT standards ribbon is the plot configuration panel. We have the page setup tool and the layer states tools. Page setup opens up the page setups palette. WisDOT offers a standards PDF output page setup palette. All the page setups on the palette are for PDF output. The abbreviations at the end of the names designates which plot style table is to be used. So we have STND, an override, and an LW, the LW being the legacy plot style table. If I go ahead and select one of the page setups, for those that have not used page setups before, it's basically a save plot output configuration that can be used for single manual plots or for multiple sheet publishing, and even to use in conjunction with drawing true view. Let's take a look at one of the layouts. Let's go to the Page Setup Manager, and notice that we now have a page setup populated here. If we go ahead and take a look, we'll notice that it's basically just a save plot configuration, and it has the WisDOT standards STP defined to it, WisDOT PDF, and it has the size. I can go ahead and add another one, PDF 11:17 override. And I'm also going to add just a couple more layouts just to show the next tool. Okay. If we go into page setups, we can select the page setup that we want, set current, and now that layout is set to that page setup. If we go back to the standards ribbon, and under the plot configuration panel pullout, there is a tool called Current Page Setup All. By using this, I can now set all my layouts to the single selected page setup. Now if I go into any one of these and go into the Page Setup Manager, I'll notice that all the layouts are set to the same page setup. See how handy this is, because if I go in, use override, set current, I now set one, I hit close, I run the tool again, and now they're all set to override. So I can go back and forth between a page setup by setting one and then pressing them all. If we take one more look at this palette, we'll see that there are basically the standard output configurations, sizes. All of them have the option for a standard, override, or legacy plot style table. One other thing to note here, within the WisDOT Civil 3D 2016 configuration, the user may set many of the options within the profile. WisDOT builds this profile on the fly during startup, and you can have your own workspace settings. WisDOT does not impede on any of the CUIs, so you can go in here and make any of these color settings. The only setting you can't set is the color scheme. WisDOT sets that as a light scheme, and the reason for that is just less maintenance for all of the images that are required if you have a light and dark, and that means more download. That means the package for updating gets larger. The last tool in the WisDOT standards ribbon is the layer states tool. I'll click on the layer states, and the layer state palette opens. At this point, WisDOT has made available three types of layer states. There is a translate layer states. This will translate 2014 layer settings to 2016 layer settings. Basically the plot style setting. We've got layer states that matches each of the three startup templates, along with an all layers layer states. This is one area where the methods development team may look to expand the offerings to include workflows and other output related layer states. You'll notice that the layer states pull down and layer states manager have been added to this panel for ease of workflow. Let's take a quick look at how layer states work. We're going to add the WisDOT 2016 all layer states. So that's the default layer states. Then we're going to go ahead and take a look. And notice that a lot of layers have been removed. Okay, you won't see any of the scaled layers. Right? Remember, it used to be the alignment had ALIs had some scales. You won't see those anymore. So what we can do is we can go in there and we can change a color for whatever reason. Okay, maybe we want to change a whole bunch of them. Okay. can change the plot style settings. Okay. And if we go back in and set the WisDOT all layers, go back to where we were with the P-aligns. Now notice they're all set back again. Okay. So you can also save your own layer states. So I could have saved all those settings. I could have had that saved, and then I can switch back and forth between the layer states. And that allows me for various types of standard outputs using the provided layer states that WisDOT provides in the palette, and creating your own for a one-off and other types of outputs that you may need. Moving along, let's go on to the WisDOT design ribbon. This ribbon will probably be the most familiar. Now, we've gone over the first two panels already. These are panels that are in WisDOT Standards, WisDOT Design, and the WisDOT Sheets ribbons. The Design Utilities panel contains custom WisDOT tools from the toolbox that are relevant and useful during the various design workflows. One of these is a Swap Parts List Styles tool. This is a new function for WisDOT's new template and pipe network configuration. You can get a quick idea of the tools with the hover tooltips. Notice if I hover over, I get a little more information on it. And WisDOT has full documentation on their websites. Don't hesitate to use WisDOT's website for documentation, videos, and training information. Now let's launch the WisDOT and Civil Imperial palette. This should look fairly familiar to you. This is where all the WisDOT subassemblies and assemblies are. Okay. They're now in tab format instead of a singular palette with dividers. If you want to know any of the information about these subassemblies, and there are a few new ones, you can use the subassembly help button along with all of the subassembly groups. We also have the assembly groups. Okay, so you can look at how the whole assembly is set up. Okay. Intersection assemblies. Little definitions on all these and what are the subassembly groupings. Next tool is the Autodesk Palettes tool. This will get you the generic out-of-the-box palette, Autodesk palettes. I want to go back for a moment. The WisDOT and Civil Imperial palette is a combination of the WisDOT palettes and the Autodesk palettes, okay? On the Parametric Design panel, there are two palette options, the BeamGuard Eats Dynamic Blocks palette and the Intersection Blocks. You got the BeamGuard. These are dynamic blocks that can be used in conjunction with the BeamGuard workflow. And then we also have the Intersection Blocks. Lastly, we have the WisDOT Sheets ribbon. Again, we are familiar with the Tools and Startup panel. Let's jump to the Sheet Template tools on the Layout template. Okay, we had the Startup template, now we have the Sheet templates. Notice we have quite a few tabs. We've got the 01 layouts, the 02, 03, 04, 5, 7, 8, 9. Okay. If they're a standalone, meaning that you can use them without a startup template, they'll be named standalones. So you got standalone layout templates. Standalone layout templates for 02s. The sheet layouts refers to a sheet layout that needs a startup template. So if you have a standalone, that means that you can insert them right into a drawing without needing a startup template. Otherwise, these sheet layouts would be a component that gets added to the start layout, or start templates, excuse me. And you can see if we run down here, varying standards layouts for each sheet group. Since many of the sheets can be created using the Civil 3D Plan Productions tools, this palette is provided as a general access to all the sheet layouts within each template. We also found out soon that Sheet Creation Components panel has copies of most of these layouts, but organized by sheet type and by sheet production workflow. Let's go ahead and add a layout. Okay. On the bottom, it prompts us, do you want a new layout name? Sure. Now we got new. Okay. All the sheet layouts come into the drawing with the standard page setup already assigned to them. Just added in new. We go in there, we'll notice that all the settings are correct. The difference is it's not a named setup. We could just as easily go in there and hit standard, set current, and now we have a named setup. Next we have the Sheets Utility panel. This panel contains some WisDOT sheet tools, both the super elevation tables and the point station offset to UDP tool. Notice the hover tooltips. You can get a lot of information, find out what these tools are all about. Next, we're at the Sheets Creation Components panel. Here we are. This is a section that is a work in progress, or the most work in progress. That's not to say that there's not already a lot of fully developed content here. It just means that since this section is based on the concept of standard sheet development workflows using palette tools, that the development and standards update process just takes a little more time to build. The methods team has decided to put what they have done out there so far, with the confidence that with an easy update process available both internally and externally, more sheet palettes and tools, when completed, can be delivered to the user rather promptly and easily. With a little drawing cleanup here, let's take a look at how the Sheet Creation Components panel is laid out. You'll notice that they are laid out in sheet groupings. Some sheet groupings have pull downs. Typical sections, construction details, whichever one you select in the pull down will be the tool that's left on top. Okay. So if you're looking for something and you can't find it, just go ahead and if it's in the pull downs. Notice picking on the tools opens up a palette. All the sheet palettes are going to have a similar layout or a similar feel, a process to them. They're going to start with a startup template. If there is a layout template that's involved and it's not a startup template, there'll be a layout template section. Then there'll be a option for set layer section for the common labeling layers, and they'll set those layers to current. Then there'll be a standards text for this sheet. If I change and set the annotation scale and use one of these mtext, comes in annotated at the right scale. If I use the add scales to annotative objects when the annotation scale changes, if I turn that on, I could then use these texts in multiple scales. So if I set a 20 scale, now I have a 20 scale. Notice that they're both insertion at the same location. One of the reasons for using annotation scale gives you much more flexibility. Even in paper space, the size of these tools is at the paper space inch size. So this is 0.1 inches in paper space. And because it's annotative, I can use it at the right size in paper space. Continuing down the palette, after the standard text for the sheet section, will be dimensions, multi-liters, and blocks. Again, remember, before using any of these layers, text, multi-liters, and dimension sheet tools, that it may be necessary to load those components into the current drawing from the standards ribbon before you use these tools. Some of these palette tools will have built-in components already loaded, like the blocks, and as we move through this, more and more of these tools will automatically load. So let's take a look at how some of the blocks function. Go grab one of we got 20 scale, one of the typical section curve blocks. Hover over it, we notice that it's a annotative scale. If you can select the object, go to properties, we see that it's been assigned the 1 in 20 foot scale. Now again, we have the add annotation objects. Will you need to do this with blocks? Probably not very often. Still gives you the option. Now I've got 1 10 foot, 120. Can also go into here and manage the annotation scales. Always delete one if I want to. Same thing goes for paper space. 1-to-1 scale. Let's take a look at some of the other properties with these blocks. Notice that they're put on the right layer. Okay. And obviously, we talked about them put on the right scale. There's also tools on these palettes. They'll create polylines on the correct layer and line type. Let's take a look at some of those. Switch over to model space here. Okay, notice that the line and line types go in at the designed annotation scale. Okay. There's quite a bit of documentation out there that Autodesk provides on how to use line types. Now let's take a look at the Topo button. The Topo palette is provided basically as a legacy palette. If you use the Wista managed palettes in the 2014, this will look almost identical. Some of these tools may be incorporated into other workflow palettes in the future. So if you can't find something that you're used to finding and you saw it in Wista managed, go ahead and try over here. Now next is the signs palette. The signs palette will be a standalone palette. Most likely, most of the signs, if any, will be incorporated into the sheet creation components. It's just because it's just such a large library. Okay, there's just so many tabs. Notice here that in order to get all the tabs, I have to use the right-click option to get down to some of the other tabs. Okay. This brings us to the WisDOT annotation panel. Here we have dimension style pull down and the multi-liter style pull down. Notice that these libraries are not populated yet. We will need to add the components to the drawing before we can see any of them. So how do we do that? We go back to standards. Let's add the dimensions. Add the multi-liters. Now when we come back here, we should see a fully populated list. Notice that you can pull these out and they'll save that way. So if I go back in here and come back out, makes it a little easier to read them. Okay. All these dimensions are annotative as well. Select the one you want. Use the dimension tool. There you go. Change the style. Select the tool. Same thing with the multi-leaders. Pull out the library. Set it. Use the tool. Override default, yes or no. We'll say no, and we get the default text. Other multi-leader styles predefined are tag numbers. Select them. Use the multi-leader tool. Add the attribution value. Since these are annotative, they get reset if you have the reset tool on. The last tool on the WisDOT annotation panel is the Annotation Palette tool. This is the general annotation palette and provides a location to access any of the WisDOT standard textiles and height options. Notice this palette also provides an option to load the specific textiles. So under each grouping, under each tab, you have to add Calibri Regular, CR, add a Calibri Light, add Arial Black. So while you're working in this workflow, you can grab these add the textile and then add the text. And they're all designed for half-size plot sheets. Plot configuration panel is added to the end of the sheets ribbon. We've gone over this before when we were in our standards ribbon. So both the standards and the WisDOT sheets have the plot configuration. So in this demonstration, we've been seeing a lot of palettes, a lot of tools on the ribbon, open palettes or change palettes. WisDOT has provided a tool that you can share palettes at a server level or open them at a local level. If we go into the WisDOT standards ribbon and we go to the tools, we'll see a WisDOT network local config switch. This can be used internally, but it also is an option externally. By selecting it, I get a dialog box. First, it shows the connect to server, connected. Current config location, in my case, I am configured locally. And then I get the option to select an option. Switch to local, I'm already local, or switch to network. By selecting switch to network and hitting OK, the dialog box comes up, tells me I need to save everything and close. Close Civil 3D. I don't need to save changes at this particular moment. I'm going to open Civil 3D using the desktop shortcut. And now all the tools on the ribbon will be directed to a server path instead of a local path. This option is provided for consultants using the server deployment method. I'll cover that in a few minutes. Now if we set a palette, a new palette, and if we go into the options and we look at the files, again, remember I told you that all the ribbon does is change the paths. Now the paths, instead of being local, are directed towards the designated server location. The consultants can designate this server location with the WisDOT extractor server deployment tool that WisDOT provides. The other tool that is under the Tools panel is the Refresh Config System Profile. So if you ever delete your profile and or you think your profile is kind of wonky or not working correctly, simply press this button. This will rebuild your profile, set it all the settings correctly, and now you have a nice profile. On the consultant side, Civil 3D will actually close and you'll have to reopen it. The other thing the tool does is verifies that there's a shortcut on your desktop, and if there's not, it will then put one back onto your desktop. So what is the Civil 3D 2016 WisDOT standards package for consultant users? WisDOT has created a packaging, extracting, and deployment process built into two separate tools. The new package will be downloadable from the WisDOT FTP site. The files you'll want to download are the WisDOT Civil 3D 2016 Installation Guide, the WisDOT 2016.c3d.msi, and the C3D 2016 Full Package Dated Zip. WisDOT has provided a installation and maintenance guide. It is very important that you read this document thoroughly before you do anything else. It will explain where to go to download the files, when to download the files, and then how to install the tools so that you can either do a local deployment or a server deployment or a combination of both of them. If we take a peek at this document, we can see that in the table of contents we have the standard configurations necessary, system requirements, updates and service packs, fixes and extensions that WisDOT's using, the date of the current updates, a section on understanding the installation deployment options, explains the local deployment option, server-based deployment options, explains what all of the tools are, and then has the installation instructions. At the end of the document are setup notes, explains the WisDOT standard directory and folder structures, and explains what system variable configurations are being set during the installation or deployment process. Here I've created a generalized 2016 installation deployment process, kind of an outline of what to expect. For installing the full standards package, what you'll need to do is download the WisDOT 2016 Civil 3D MSI file. From that file you can install the WisDOT package extractor, then deploy the WisDOT standards files locally or to a server using the WisDOT package extractor. For server deployment, deploy the standards file to the local workstation using the WisDOT maintenance update tool. The WisDOT maintenance tool can also be installed using the WisDOT 2016 Civil 3D MSI. For updating the standards files, once you have them installed on each workstation, you simply need to download the updated zip packages if an update zip file is posted on the WisDOT FTP site. You'll be contacted or notified when that occurs. Use the WisDOT package extractor to deploy local or server, and then users may run the WisDOT maintenance update tool when new update zip packages are unpacked to the server directory. So, skinny it up, the WisDOT package extractor can be used to deploy directly locally or to unpackage those files and put them on a server. If you put them on a server, each local workstation then needs to have the WisDOT maintenance tool installed. That WisDOT maintenance tool will then be used by the user to synchronize or copy or pull down those files from the server to the proper local folder locations.